Recently, I was in Roach Brothers, and a man came up to me and said, "Hey, Monsignor, that was a great sermon you gave the other day." I always like a compliment, so I just said, "Well, thank you very much." But unfortunately, he went on to say, "I don't remember what you said, but it was good." I guess I wasn't clear enough, because when you don't have a clue as to what I said, it's not a good homily. So I'm going to use an old-fashioned teaching technique. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to say. I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to tell you what I said. Today's homily is all about something called evangelization. To evangelize is to preach the gospel, to tell others about Christ and his church. And we'll do this by looking at three different things. First, the section of Luke's gospel that we just heard from the 10th chapter. Secondly, a word or two on the state of the so-called professional evangelizers. And thirdly, a reminder that evangelization is a vocation that is given to all the baptized. Last week, we began a journey in Luke's gospel. Jesus is moving toward Jerusalem. And on the way, he teaches his disciples. And what he teaches today is the fact that he needs the voices of others to help spread the news of the kingdom. He takes 72 disciples and sends them off in pairs, kind of like an advance team. Maybe that's where the Mormons got the idea of going 2 by 2 to each household. And he says that the harvest is rich, but the workers are few. So the Lord really teaches us that he depends on others to help spread the good news. This passage is often used to introduce a talk on the need for vocations to the priesthood or diaconate or religious life. And why not? What was true in the Lord's time is also true in ours, that the harvest is rich, but the laborers are few. Men and women from the age of 15 to 60 ought to give some consideration to a possible vocation as a professional evangelizer. If you're in good health, of average intelligence, and trying to live a good life, you may be being called and not recognize it. Maybe all of us can make a conscious effort to encourage vocations to priesthood, diaconate, and religious life. We need to have people who commit their lives to the spreading of the gospel. Studies show that when a person is told by another that he or she ought to consider a vocation, they at least give it some thought. So if your son or daughter, grandchild or neighbor has the qualities for a possible vocation, ask them to consider the possibility of becoming a professional evangelizer. But it's not simply up to the priests, deacons, or religious to preach the gospel. Actually, it's the task of all the baptized. And that's the main point in the gospel today, that it requires others to tell others about the kingdom. It's often done in a way that we don't allude to it in the terms of evangelization, but that's what it is. For example, parents are the primary educators of their children in the way of faith. They evangelize all the time, but they just don't call it that. We non-parents or members of the parish with grown children should thank the so-called active parents for what they do to help the church continue. Without them, the faith would not be passed on. In addition to parents, others have the opportunity to evangelize, to spread the good news of the gospel. They can do it day in and day out. Kind words and deeds done in the name of Christ are ways we can preach the gospel. As I've quoted before, St. Francis of Assisi said to his followers, "Preach always, and if necessary, use words." That's what evangelization is all about.